Hello! Happy holidays to those that celebrate, and welcome to Devlog number 2 for Tank Game. It's been a bit longer than expected since the last devlog, but I've made a ton of progress. It feels like I'm getting relatively close to release, but I want to have at least a handful more people playtest the game before we start getting ready to put it out. For those that haven't seen it yet, we'll take a quick peek at what kind of game this is, but the more in-depth playthrough will be coming later in the video. So let's take a look. Hopefully our volume somewhere's where it should be. Have a little bit of scrolling text. Very, very simple story, and this is the lot of the story here. Nothing more than one very short paragraph. Instructions up at the top. We won't wait for it to scroll the whole way up, but that's really all the text there is. And enter to start. So it's just a 2D top-down shooter, arena-type shooter. Enemies spawn in, and you kill them. You get coins, temporary weapon upgrades, health and grenades. And you try and survive. Survive long enough, or kill enough enemies, I should say, and you open the door to the next area. Each new area has new enemies. So we'll quit that out for now. And the first thing we'll really take a look at here will be just peeking through some of the assets. So fonts, same font that it's always been, just I believe it's a knockoff of the Pokemon font, but it seems to do the trick for a sort of arcadey look. Yeah, the one here is just a larger version of that. Where the bulk of my work is on the objects. So the first tab we have here, the doors and walls. These all basically function the same, at least the doors. The door has a kill count, and it's the variable that it gets is an adjusted kill count because it grabs the kill count that's already in place and then adds a number to it. So when you enter the room, regardless of how many kills you had before, in this case for level 3, it's going to take 240 more kills. And once that happens, it creates the actual exit door object, which is visible. Unlike this one would be invisible. And that's what you can actually exit through. And that just creates a invisible object called Room Exit Blackout, which blacks out the screen with some code and turns you invisible. Invincible, not invisible. And the wall doesn't have any code on it at all. I think all the code for that would be sitting on anything that collides with it. The next thing we'll take a look at is some of the enemies. So we have 4 different folders here. We have the enemy spawns, which is the enemy as it's being spawned in. It starts mostly transparent, and then it sort of starts large and lands on the ground, and then becomes the actual enemy. The spawners are just some invisible objects that spawn the enemies around in an area radius around it. And the spawner spawns spawners, as is in the name. So at the end of a level, when the door opens up, it will gradually get more and more dangerous to stick around. But with that out of the way, we'll start taking a look at the enemies. So the first enemy that you saw, and would have been made on my first devlog, at least for the most part, just an enemy drone. Doesn't do anything too crazy, it just moves mostly in the direction of the player with a little bit of randomization. And then if we were to take a little bit further down, we have the events on what happens when it dies. Increases the score, creates an explosion, plays a death sound with a semi-random pitch, destroys its own object, and then a little bit further down, we can see its drop table, its chance to drop a grenade, extra coins, weapons, or health drops. We'll take a look at the Dozer next, because that's the second enemy that shows up in the game. This one works fairly similar to the drone, except it has significantly more health. And instead of its fairly stable, fairly level movement towards the player, this one will lurch slowly and then take a big jump forward. And then sort of repeat that cycle. The next enemy that shows up, I might be getting the order a little wrong here, but I think the next one would be the Flyer. This one, fairly simple. It doesn't take track of where the player is at all. It just moves in a diagonal direction. And when it hits a wall, it bounces off of it. And this one would also have a fair bit more health than the last two that we've seen so far, with 38. The next enemy that shows up would be the shooter, and this enemy would move around in sort of a four-pronged star, curved star. We can see that pattern if we jump all the way down to paths here. It moves in this shape, and the path would start right about here at the top. It will randomize the orientation of this path, and then it'll start moving like that. If it hits the wall, it'll go back along the other way on the path. And every handful of seconds, roll down, I can figure out about how long. It's one of these alarms, I believe. Yeah, every 210 frames, so a little over every 3 seconds, it's going to shoot a bullet at the player. What's our next enemy here? I think after the room with the shooters, you get your first boss, the tank boss. And this is the first enemy that comes in 2 parts. It has the tank base, kind of like how the player's programmed, which we'll see in a little bit here. The tank moves much like the dozer. It gradually turns towards the player, and instead of doing the lurch, it does move at a consistent pace. And then we have the turret on top, which just faces towards the player and takes shots at a regular interval. Something else we have going on with the tank boss is every handful of seconds, I think a little bit less often than it shoots its regular bullet, it shoots off another kind of bullet that works a lot like the cross weapon in Castlevania, to where it shoots in one direction a little bit and then it goes its full length backwards. I didn't do that intentionally. The intent was to just have it all shoot around in multiple directions in a straight line. But I kind of messed up my slowdown code, and it slowed it down before the thing got destroyed, and it shot itself backwards, and I kind of liked it. It gives you a little bit more warning before it comes flying at you. The next enemy we'd have would be the bomber. The bomber's fairly simple. When it spawns, it either goes left and right or up and down, and occasionally drops bombs, or they look a little bit more like mines at this point. A lot of the on-step code for the enemies is fairly similar, like we have our drop table again here. And really the only thing besides the death code we have is making the image angle equal its direction. And our last enemy, I don't think I missed any here. Now, before we get to our last enemy, there is another boss encounter that's just the very same as the tank boss, except there's 2 of them. But then you get the last actual enemy, which is the turret. And this one also comes in 2 pieces. It comes with the turret base. It's created. I think it has the most health of any enemy besides the boss. This is all just death code, because most of it, what it does is on the turret gun itself. And if the player hits it, we do have a script for that, which this is the same script that's on all of the enemies except for the boss. If the player hits it, it does 1 damage to the player and it blows up the enemy. Alright, the next thing we'll take a look at here would be the buttons under the GUI section. And these buttons would control the upgrades, both on the first upgrade room when you choose your auxiliary ability, either a Pulse Blast or some invulnerability, and the more generic upgrades for every room afterwards, max health, damage, grenades, that kind of thing. If we're just going to take a look at, on the aux selection room, the invulnerability step, it's just checking if it's pressed. If it does, destroy itself. The draw, since we only have that white box there for the button, this is where it's drawing its words. It's word on the button itself, as well as the description on the sort of the top middle section of the screen. That's its explanation. Oh, that would be right here. To select an upgrade if you don't have the mouse over it, but if you do, then it tells you what the ability does and what you press to use it. We also have some code to where you have your mouse over it, it's going to increase the size a little bit. I'm not going to go through every individual button here, but we'll see how they work when we get into game. One of the main updates I've done since the last version of this game is the GUI is now a whole lot more of a graphical user interface as opposed to just words and letters. So now we have the coin tracker, which shows an actual coin at the bottom left of the screen and has some text to the right of it saying how many coins you have. Very similar thing with the grenade tracker, which is on the top left side of the screen and shows you both how many grenades you have and your max. We have the frame for the health bar, as well as the health bar itself, which we have its origin point on the far left, so when we are changing the X scale of it, how wide it is, which would be on our, there we are, on our draw begin event. The X scale of the object is your health divided by your health max, making it fill up the bar a percentage of how much health you currently have. Sound control, these are just the invisible objects which control the music. Most of these objects existed in the previous version of the game on my last devlog, just the visual indicators for your weapon upgrades. The cursor's new for your upgrade screen. The reticule we had before. And a lot of these just serve some function in game. For instance, hit flash is an object that's created anytime you get hit and just fills the screen up with a white box and very quickly fades away. Our pickups, nothing new here, just the same 3 weapons we've always had. Oh, there is something new here. We added a 10 coin, which is a little bit bigger and a little bit oranger than the normal coin, just because we needed to increase how much coins the player was getting so they'd have enough for their upgrades. Our player, also not a whole lot new here. We have the base of the tank. Something we did do was we moved a lot of variables off of the player and onto, well, it's not correctly named, we moved it onto the GUI object. Our health, our max health, our grenades, that kind of thing, because those need to be upgraded between levels. And in between those levels, the player doesn't exist anymore. So we need to keep track of that somewhere besides the player object. And then on top of that, you either have your regular gun or one of the upgraded guns. This has some very basic variables set at the start. And on step, we make sure it's placed on the player. And then this is our code to shoot, placing a bullet in the point direction of its image angle by 56 frames. Not frames, pixels. And creates a bullet. And the code is on the bullet to shoot off. This is just the code for its sound. Down here we have the code to create a grenade. And this is just every frame. It will bring down the cooldown so it can shoot again. What else do we have to look at here? Projectiles and explosions. A few new things we have here. We have the Pulse Blast, which is just a blue circle that quickly fades to transparent and gets larger so it can hit enemies. Looks a bit like a pulse blast, as is in the name. We have the enemy. This one is the enemy bullet for the shooter, and we also have the tank boss bullet 1 and 2. The first one gets fired directly at the player, and the second one that does that Castlevania looking thing. And we have all of our rooms. We're to take a look at, let's just say, room 6. Oh, that's the upgrade room with all of our buttons, but actual room 6. We can see that we start with a couple of enemies already spawned. I did go ahead and color code my spawners, even though these are invisible to the player. I know what color is what enemy. The red one's the bomber. The green one is the regular drones. The pinkish purple one is the shooter. The blue is the flyer, and the black is the dozer. And the spawners will control where the enemies spawn in, usually in an area, I wager about this big, the circle I'm making with my mouse. Alright, we have our scripts. Now, to make the dozer and some of the turrets face towards the player gradually, I tried my best to code that myself, and I just could not get it to work the way I wanted, so I wrote most of the code for this game. This script was entirely taken from the internet. And this does exactly what I was looking for. Who made it? Code taken from, the website is gibransiad.wordpress.com, so thank you for that. And we just call that script anytime we need to face the player, but not immediately. Our sounds. And we could probably take a little bit of a look at that. A lot of the sounds I did use Creative Commons sounds for are sounds that I've purchased in the past. If I purchased it, it's probably off Humble Bundle. But some sounds I made myself. For instance, the grenade pickup, what else did I make? Some of the upgrade sounds when you pick up a different weapon when an enemy dies. That was all done by me with one of two techniques. I either used a plugin that creates very chiptune-like sounds, or I used white noise and pitched it up or down and sometimes processed it after the fact to make it echo. So, for instance, oh, there we go, there's another one I did, the player death. It sounds something like this. So that's just white noise with some delay on it. Enemy death was probably similar, except just one quick echo, so it doesn't go on too long. Oh, looks like I did the coin pickup. The grenade pickup. This is the plugin that I was using for that. I can only find this plugin on websites that aren't in English, and it works really well. I've also typically only found it on very spyware-looking sites, so download with caution, but I've used this plugin since I was like 12 or 13. The first soundtrack I was ever paid for heavily relied on this plugin, and it works fairly well. And what else did we do? And that was, I should rename that, that was the sound for when your aux ability comes online, because just the word going from not ready to ready is not the greatest indicator. Alright, that's named correctly now. Yeah, those are some of the sounds I made. The music was from a shoot-'em-up library I got off Humble Bundle, and most everything else was off freesound.com. When I publish the game, I do have a list of all the credits for everything I've made. And our sprites. We're not going to go through all of these here because we'll see them in the game, which we will. I've gone through everything I need to here, which we're about to get into now. Let's do a longer playthrough. Okay, launching the game again. Now, we're not going to play through every level in its entirety. I do have some developer cheats where I can quickly up my kill count and the amount of coins I have, so we're going to be doing a lot of that. First level, all we have here is the drones, and here we can see the GUI. Oh, I probably want to make sure that my mouse is above that health bar. I'll work on that. Above everything else, it seems. We have all of our enemies. We can see that when we take a hit, it decreases our health the correct amount. The health bar goes down a percentage of whatever percentage of health you have. One other thing that we did was instead of escape immediately quitting the game, it now gives you a warning and you can press escape again to quit. And once that goes away, escape won't quit until you pull it up again. Something else I introduced here, which we probably would have seen on my first quick playthrough. We now have some magnet drag on all the items except for the weapon pickups, because there are times you might not want to pick up a weapon. Let's say you already like the one that you have. Getting the sounds coming through my headphones here. Alright, lost my train of thought there, but yes, the weapons don't have magnet drag just because, let's say you already have the BFG, you might not want to pick up the shotgun, or let's say there's two BFGs, you might want to get as close as you can towards the end of your time using that weapon before you pick up the second one. to use your good guns as long as possible. But everything else is really no reason not to pick up, so we pull them towards you. I noticed when watching a few other people playtesting that they weren't quite picking up as many coins as they needed, so hopefully that helps them along. I didn't want to just increase the amount of coins out there. Alright, that's enough of this level. Let's use some of my cheat codes, get myself some more coins, and up the kill count. Let's go to the next level. So, first upgrade area, you don't get the generic upgrades, but you get one of 2 aux abilities. I was thinking of making a third one, and I was debating that being a turret drop, but for the time being, I'm just keeping it with the 2. So either invulnerability, where you go a little bit transparent for a few seconds and you can't get hit, or pulse blast, which we'll take a look at now. You can see up here we just got a new element to our GUI, and aux ability ready. Show that off now. Spacebar does that quick blast, and does some damage to everyone. We have our second enemy, the Dozer, which instead of facing right towards you, like the drones do, mostly, they turn gradually. So they don't all group up too badly. They do layer on top of each other a little bit, but we did our best to mitigate that without having any kind of collision detection. I think that's really all we have to show off here, so we'll skip ahead. And then this is the upgrade screen that we're going to see between every other level. We have 3,000 coins because we cheated a little bit. We have max HP, bullet damage, grenades, which you increase the damage of and the capacity, the speed that you move at, and your aux ability. This increases the damage of your pulse wave if that's what you chose, or it increases how long you're invincible for if you chose invincibility. And these all go up by a sort of exponential curve of cost, so first one's 100, the second one's 108, the next one's 125. You can kind of see that how that goes up here. I won't go too crazy on the upgrades, we'll just go to the next level. I do need to consider whether I want there to be a weapon pickup at the start of every level. It's the way I've always done it so far, but I might change that when we get to release. We have our third enemy there, the Flyer. And that just moves diagonally and bounces when we hit walls. At least it should. I was having some issues with that in the past, but that seems to be working fine now. I did have some catch in the code that if it got past the wall and hit the edge of the room, that it would just explode, and we might see that now. Might need to look into that. Okay, so we still have some things to look into with the Flyers code, but they are bouncing correctly way more often than they used to. Alright, so that's probably good here. When I'm not killing the enemies, they can really pile up. Put our grenades to good use. Try not to die. And we'll skip ahead to the next level. Alright, let's get our bullet damage up so we can quickly kill the things if we get distracted explaining things. And this is our first boss level. This is also where we had that invisible object that changed the music and stopped the previous music. We can see those rebounding pulse blasts. Just the 6 bullets that go in all directions. And the need to sort of circle strafe because it's shooting at you with its turret as well. We've almost got him down. On a normal playthrough, you probably wouldn't be doing this much damage, because I did cheat to get some extra coins, just to keep this process moving along. So if you choose not to kill the boss and you just keep killing the enemies, there is a kill count that you'll reach that'll open up the door and create the spawner, just so you can't stick around forever and farm. Alright, next level. And what enemy do we introduce here? I think it's the shooter. Yes, it is, and that would be the shooter enemy that moves in that 4-pronged star and occasionally shoots at you. And every level does have all the enemies from the previous levels. don't think there's any exception to that in the 9 levels to the game I do have. We'll skip ahead. And what do we have next? I believe it's the bombers. Maybe. There we go. There's the new enemies, the bombers. They move up and down, or left and right, and they drop those mines. Still calling it a bomber because a miner doesn't make as much sense. But it's not like the player ever sees the name of the enemy, so they can call it whatever they want. Alright, we'll skip ahead. And we have one more level before the boss level, and then the kill room. So we start with a few bombers, and a drone, and the turrets should start spawning in shortly. There we go, there's one. And they shoot those red bullets at you, a lot like the bullets that came from the boss. Let's move around. It looks like I have that directly facing you. I might want to go in and have that use the gradually face code. But that is something for after this video. We'll skip ahead here and go to the last boss level. Same boss as the first boss, except there's 2 of them. Definitely feeling big on the creativity. So, it looks like that turret does also face you directly. I might use the gradual face code on that as well. But I am undecided, as it does seem to work fairly well. I'm out of grenades. I'll actually try and kill these. I did get enough upgrades that this should be more than possible, but coming in with no grenades was probably a bad choice. Now, the tank boss is the only enemy that will not die instantly when you run into it. But it will do 1 damage to you and create an explosion. Now, if you put yourself right in the center of the boss and get hit by all 6 bullets at once, that can... Well, it used to instantly kill you back when your max health was only 5, but at this point, now that you have more health, you might be able to survive one of those. Okay, let's focus on that boss. Because we are getting real busy in here. Was not focusing on the other enemies. It is pretty chaotic in here, but this is functionally the last level, so we do want it to be pretty difficult. Alright, we made it out. And this is the kill room. Starts with nothing in it. But it starts with one of those spawners. So, while all the enemies besides the drones will keep coming in at the same rate, there will be incrementally more and more drones spawning in. So, death is inevitable. And there's also as many spawners as there are in any other level. So it's already a fair amount of enemies spawning in. We'll see how long I can survive. I do have a fair bit of health. I did dump most of my ill-gotten coins into health. Maybe we won't see how long I'll survive. I'll just kick around for a minute or 2, and then we'll run into a bunch of enemies. I was thinking about maybe putting a spawner in for the tank boss, but we'd only want to have one of those out there at once. So unlike the other spawners, there would need to be a check to see if one already exists. Nothing too difficult. Very likely I'll do something like that. Alright, so we can see things are getting pretty crazy here, and the amount of drones being spawned in is getting a little crazy. Let's find our death. I can take a lot of hits, but there we go. Dead. Now, if you die on this last room, it will add this extra line. Time to kill room. Oh! The death room should probably show the cursor instead of the reticule. I will look into that. But yes, the time to kill room, if anyone wanted to speedrun the game, the timer's only going while you're in the combat areas, not while you're upgrading, and it stops as soon as you kill the 2 bosses, or once you hit the exit door for that room. Get your final score, and enter to restart. There we are. That's the game I've got. I don't imagine a whole lot is going to change by the time this gets out there, except for the few things I did point out, the few errors or bugs I found along the way. But that is Tank Game, or as I'm considering calling it, Tank vs. Aliens. I'm not the most creative person out there when it comes to naming, so hopefully I'll come up with something better before release. But I'm leaning towards Tank vs. Aliens. Alright, thank you for watching. Take care, everybody.